Even though the old adage goes something like, first impressions are often deceiving, the old saying would be more than just words on this bright Tuesday morning at the Copper Kettle Cafe. 5 members of the infamous Red Serpents Motorcycle Club erred and threatened the incorrect woman on an otherwise ordinary morning, leading to one of the most talked about events in Pinewood Ridge's history. Claire Mitchell, a former CIA Special Activities Division operative with 15 years of expertise in some of the world's most perilous clandestine missions, sat elegantly and silently in the corner. Little did they realize that not only would their meeting alter the course of events in the town that day, but it would also go viral, reaching millions of people and demonstrating to the world what happens when bullies choose the wrong victim. Be sure to subscribe if you found this story meaningful, and before we start, tell us where you're viewing from in the comments. Something much more thrilling is in store for you tomorrow. The aged hardwood flooring of the Copper Kettle Cafe were bathed in warm patterns as the early sunshine filtered through the enormous windows. In contrast to the thundering motorcycles that would soon disrupt the morning tranquility, Claire Mitchell's silver Tesla Model 3's electric motor made a hushed hum as it was pushed into the parking lot. She maintained her peak physical condition far into her 45th year, a need stemming from her extensive experience in high-stakes operations across 3 continents. Her habit of constantly scanning her surroundings with her steel-gray eyes had saved her life more times than she could count as she retrieved her tablet and leather portfolio from the passenger seat. Claire rang the little brass bell to signal her arrival, and Jenny Chin glanced up from the espresso machine. "The same Ms. Mitchell, right?" With Claire's favorite cup in her hand, Jenny yelled out. The regular customer had stopped 3 terrorist attacks in the United States and once busted a human trafficking network in Southeast Asia, but the inexperienced barista had no clue. Claire was only another working professional who enjoyed the cafe's baked lemon pound cake and a strong cup of coffee, in her view. With the exception of an old man perusing the paper at the counter and a young couple enjoying a leisurely breakfast by the window, the cafe was surprisingly deserted. A tranquil ambience floated among the exposed brick walls and old coffee posters as Miles Davis's brand of blue, a kind of soft jazz, hummed softly from concealed speakers. To avoid strain on her back and yet have a good view of the front door and the kitchen exit, Claire sat down at her usual table in the far back corner. After Claire left the CIA, her life took a dramatic turn, and she reflected on this while she perused security consulting bids on her tablet. She was able to put her skills to use while staying out of the spotlight as a consultant who helped small businesses secure themselves from cyber and physical dangers. The job was fulfilling, but it lacked the thrill of her prior profession. However, Claire had long since realized that excitement did not necessarily lead to good things. Jenny delivered her order, which consisted of 2 espresso shots and a lemon pound cake slice. "A second shot, exactly to your liking," Jenny winked at you. As Claire noticed the textbooks protruding from Jenny's apron pocket, she greeted Jenny warmly and smiled. Claire looked up to the young barista because she was so dedicated to her studies. She was a nursing student. The loud rumbling of several Harley-Davidsons approaching the parking lot was going to disrupt the tranquil morning ritual. With her trained ears, Claire counted the engines, 5 bikes, each with its own bespoke pipe, as she paused halfway to her coffee cup. She observed the Red Serpents Motorcycle Club members dismounting their bikes via the wide front windows. The club's logo adorned their leather cuts. A crimson scorpion with a twisted dagger in its grasp. The young couple seated by the window swiftly settled their bill and departed, silently apologizing to Jenny with a substantial tip. The old man behind the counter, who was attempting to blend in as much as possible, found his newspaper incredibly fascinating for some reason. While cautiously scanning the area behind the register for the phone, Jenny's hands quivered a little as she wiped down the counter. Claire stayed motionless, her body at ease but her mind resuming the hyper-awareness that had been so helpful during her many surgeries. Observing the 5 guys as they entered the cafe, she meticulously recorded their every motion, even the small protrusions beneath their leather vests that hinted at the presence of concealed weapons. Based on Claire's observations of his tactical spacing and the way he utilized hand signals to position his soldiers, the leader appeared to be an ex-military man, a towering figure with graying temples and a well-groomed beard, who exuded an air of military efficiency. Lately, the Red Serpents have been in the news a lot. Across 3 counties, they target small firms in their protection racket. The predictable pattern of increasing violence and intimidation was reported in the local papers, which Claire had read about. Just last week, Claire had hoped that things wouldn't escalate to this point, but cafe owner Eleanor Thompson confided in her about their growing demands for protection money. With the sound of the motorcyclists' heavy boots reverberating off the wooden floor, Claire sipped her latte once again. Her anticipation was palpable. She had witnessed this pattern occurring repeatedly in various parts of the globe. Whether or not they would have the good sense to pass up the opportunity was the sole question. It seemed implausible to her. She found that bullies almost never realized their error until after it had happened. The commander leaned forward toward the counter, his leather cut making a creaking sound. "My darling Jenny." Claire felt her jaw clench as his voice sounded fakely pleasant. "I am searching for Eleanor." "Where is she?" "We should discuss her most recent payment. She appears to have slipped behind." Jenny's response was accompanied by a little quiver in her voice. "At this moment, Miss Thompson is not present. Her name is She. She is expected to return later today." Unfortunately, the leader expressed his disapproval in a more forceful manner. Because the timing of payments was explicitly agreed upon. He then motioned around the cafe, and his friends started rushing from table to table, purposefully setting chairs and drinks on edge, in the event that customers failed to pay. As one of the motorcyclists drew near her table, Claire saw his shadow cast on her tablet. She had not yet looked up. Through the years, she had learned the importance of being patient and waiting for things to unfold before taking action. Who knew how far they would take things? It was interesting to her. As he pounded on her table with his fingers, the biker let out a low growl. "I think it's time to depart now that this place is closed." Claire continued to glance down as she sipped her cappuccino. Quietly, she remarked, "I still haven't had my coffee," her voice exuding an air of collected authority that caused the motorcyclist to halt for a second. "Additionally, I think this place is open for business." As a result of her defiance, the leader looked away from the counter. He took in her nice blazer and businesslike demeanor as he watched her for a time. He assured her, well, as he cautiously made his way to her table. "It seems like we have someone on our hands who is confused about how things operate here." Claire finally looked up to meet his gaze and responded, "I understand perfectly." Her ice-gray eyes met his, and he felt a little tremor at her look. "You're employing threats and intimidation to coerce honest, little companies like this cafe into paying you. Have I overlooked anything?" The mood of the leader deteriorated. "Listen, lady, you should stay out of this." He leaned forward, trying to tower over her, and put both hands on the table. "This is Red Scorpion's domain, and my name is Victor. By maintaining order and preventing harm to peaceful areas like this one, we do an important public service." Carefully placing her coffee cup on the table, Claire laid it aside. "Victor, your word choice is intriguing. That part about trying to maintain peace while you're the one causing it is particularly egregious." Looking down at his hands resting on the table, she took a quick glimpse toward him. "Plus, my desk is covered in fingerprints from you." Then one of the other motorcyclists, a young man with a new scorpion tattoo across his neck, drew nearer. "Boss, would you like me to demonstrate this haughty bite?" Claire cut him off mid-sentence with her harsh enough tone that he immediately shut talking. "Someone's here, a young woman." Jenny, who was gawking at the incident, received a nod from her. With a menacing grin forming across his face, Victor stood up. "Guess what? It seems like you're missing the point here. Alright, I'll make it really easy." As if on cue, 2 of his men scampered over to the cafe's windows and pulled the blinds. Still another one stood by the entrance. Claire surprised them by saying it was much better. Expect fewer people to be around when this occurs. Despite her lack of experience, she gradually gathered her documents and slipped them into her portfolio. Victor chuckled, his laughter carrying an undercurrent of doubt. "My dear, the only thing that's going to happen is that you will gain a great appreciation for the Red Serpents." Closing her portfolio, Claire noted that you are rather self-assured considering you haven't even bothered to inquire about my identity. By the way, that was a mistake in strategy. Just one of many that you're currently creating. The inked-necked young rider drew nearer, banging his fists. "Excuse me, boss, she is being really insistent." A sound betraying Claire's true dissatisfaction was her sigh. Second tactical blunder committed. She met Victor's intense gaze. "You can tell your man is planning to attack because he's acting aggressively before you even engage him. Such an error could have catastrophic consequences in any major conflict." Victor hesitated due to anything in her expert evaluation of their method. As he studied her posture, her composure in the face of overwhelming danger, and the way she had adjusted her chair to allow herself greater freedom of movement, his pupils widened in concentration. "Can you tell me who I am?" His voice betrayed some of its machismo as he made his demand. Claire responded that it was someone who was looking forward to a peaceful morning coffee. "Actually, I'm dealing with 5 guys who are poised to commit a string of progressively bad actions." She looked down at her wristwatch. "I guess we should just go ahead and do it. In only 1 hour, I have a meeting." Her composed attitude was too much for the younger motorcyclist. With the intention of removing her from her seat, he extended his arm toward her. "Pay attention, you messed up." Jenny, who remained observing from behind the counter, would later struggle to describe what transpired to the authorities due to the rapidity with which it occurred. No hand from the young motorcyclist ever made it to Claire. Uncomfortably, he found himself face down on the floor with his arm bent at an angle. Even while Claire sat there, her hand casually resting on her portfolio. With her voice remaining unnervingly composed, Claire admitted that was the third tactical blunder. Start a violent altercation before you know your opponent's strength. She increased her pressure just a little, and the motorcyclist let out a whimper. "Do you want me to tell you about the additional mistakes you're about to make, or are you ready to stop?" Standing back, Victor reached for his vest, where Claire could make out the shape of a hidden weapon. "You're going to regret this," he said with a low, uncertain voice. Claire saw another strategic blunder. Using threats as a cover to show that you're going to pull a gun. Little by little, she shook her head. "I thought you served, too. Unless, of course, you're assuming a special operations role. According to your age and build, you are likely a regular infantryman from the late 90s. I think you're capable of more than this, Victor." His confidence was clearly rocked by her astute evaluation of his military history. As they waited for instructions, the other motorcyclists glanced uncertainly at their leader. When the young man on the floor realized that moving about made him feel worse, he quit trying. "This is your final opportunity," Claire whispered softly. "Leave immediately. Just give Eleanor some space in this cafe. Get your military experience used in a legal way. Victor, you are capable of more." "Well, you weren't always like that." He appeared to be seriously considering her offer for an instant. But then his ego got the best of him. Anger was making his features stiffen. Put an end to her. To his surviving soldiers, he snarled. "Right now." The fifth tactical blunder would be that, Claire admitted with sincere remorse. The young motorcyclist was free to scamper away after she let go of his arm. "Please, Jenny, hide behind the counter if you would like. Things are about to become interesting." It was unnecessary to tell Jenny twice. She slid under the counter at the Copper Kettle Cafe at the exact moment chaos ensued. What followed was a demonstration of close quarters fighting at its finest. Claire was attacked at the same time by the 3 surviving bikers, who were hoping to outnumber her. On the contrary, they were confronted by someone who had dedicated years of preparation to mastering such challenges. At just the right moment, Claire drew back from the table, putting her chair in the way of the first assailant. Riding on his forward speed, the motorcyclist crashed into the sturdy wooden frame of the chair. Claire subtly redirected his forward trajectory, turning him into one of his companions, interrupting his groan of pain. Claire was already in motion as Victor retreated and reached for his concealed handgun. Her motions were deliberate and efficient, and she moved between the downed riders like water. The third motorcyclist gasped and clutched his throat as her stiff fingers hit specific pressure spots with her outstretched palm. The use of physical force is overemphasized in conventional military training. Claire made a quip as she deftly avoided a ferocious punch from a recovering motorcyclist. Preventing conflicts before they start is a skill you learn from the CIA. She seized the assailant's outstretched arm and sent him tumbling into a table by harnessing his own momentum. The floor was covered in broken coffee cups, their contents splattered across the weathered wood. With a metallic click, the blade of the switchblade snapped open as the young motorcyclist with the tattoo on his neck got back on his feet. "You're dead," he growled, his voice quivering slightly. In fact, Claire grinned. "Are you already using weapons? The sixth tactical error has been committed." Her hand motioned toward his posture. "Your knife grip is reminiscent of something you may see in a movie. Would you prefer that I demonstrate the correct method to you before you cause yourself harm?" Claire dove under his reach, blocking his knife arm with her left hand and striking him square in the solar plexus with her right. He sprang forward, cutting in a broad arc with his blade. In his effort to catch his breath, he drooped down, and the blade clattered to the ground. "Have you noticed that I refrain from using physical force at all?" Claire made her statement to the wind. Energy efficiency is of the utmost importance in actual battle scenarios. Even Hollywood messes up on that. Finally, Victor drew his firearm, a worn-out small .380 pistol. His voice rose to a yell as he directed the rifle towards Claire. "You must now bow down." With wide eyes, the old man behind the counter lowered his newspaper slowly. Jenny, her face flushed with terror, peered over the edge of the counter. Mild jazz, courtesy of Miles Davis, remained blaring from the speakers, creating an oddly fitting background score for the scene. Claire did not move an inch, her hands resting comfortably by her sides. "Do you recognize that as a Walther PPK? Standard issue firearm for the armed forces. 7 rounds, if my memory serves me right." She stared straight into Victor's eyes. "When was the most recent maintenance appointment? You can see that the slide is sticky." Victor's trigger finger clenched. "Put your hands down and remain silent." The 7th tactical blunder is brandishing a gun at a person who was just sipping their coffee in the morning. As if he hadn't said a word, Claire went on. "Especially in cases where your comprehension is limited. Do you happen to have noticed, Victor, that I neutralized 3 of your men without ever exposing my left side?" First Victor's eyes opened in comprehension, then they narrowed in perplexion. Now it's too late. Under Claire's blazer she had stashed her own weapon, ready to be drawn with a left hand. Quickly and with practice, she whipped out a matte black Sig Sauer before he could respond. With an unfaltering grasp, she spoke quietly about her federal gun's license. In addition to the necessary concealed carry permits. "Would you be interested in contrasting our credentials?" The grip of Victor's rifle shook ever so slightly. The few remaining motorcyclists who were aware of what was happening were either writhing in pain or completely still as they observed the confrontation. "It will unfold like this." Claire carried on with an air of authority, practically lecturing. "Put your weapon on the table as carefully as possible. After that, you and your companions will depart from this cafe. Your protection racket will slip your mind. And not only here, but at every single company you've been threatening. Taking on the entire club is too much." Victor scowled, but his bluster was beginning to crumble. Claire's eyes remained unblinked by her smile. "Yes, I am capable. You see, the surveillance footage has been running facial recognition software the whole time we've been having this wonderful talk. Are you interested in finding out the total number of Red Serpents in 3 different states with active warrants?" On the floor, one of the motorcyclists shouted an expletive. The color had faded from Victor's face. That is, of course, only the tip of the iceberg. According to Claire, I have extensive records on your business processes, supplier chains, and financial systems. At the moment, such files are safely stored on a server that uses encryption. My case will be instantly forwarded to all law enforcement agencies within 100 miles if anything were to happen to me or if any local business were to report additional harassment. Victor said that you're bluffing, but his gun hand had dipped ever so slightly. You learn a lot from the CIA, Victor. Not one of them involves bluffing. Claire is unwavering in her pursuit. Just 3 seconds remain for you to decide. Following that, the situation becomes much more intricate. There was an overwhelming sense of unease throughout the cafe. From behind the counter, Jenny held her breath. With a mix of dread and interest, the old guy watched the spectacle unfold, having entirely given up on pretending to read his newspaper. 1. Claire started to count with an eerily silent voice. Claire's unfaltering weapon and Victor's fallen colleagues were in his mind at the same time. 2. The ink-necked young rider was desperately gesticulating to his boss while shaking his head wildly. Victor slouched on his haunches right before Claire got to 3. He moved delicately, set his weapon on the closest table, and then stepped back, hands up. In Claire's opinion, that was a wise decision. Concerning those unpaid warrants, I have some news. Claire ordered everyone to get down on their knees, her voice betraying her habit of command and obedience. Gather your hands behind your heads and clasp them together. Gesturing ever so slightly toward the counter, she kept her aim steady. Please, Jenny, contact the authorities immediately to inform them that we have apprehended numerous people who are armed. With her quivering fingers already dialing 911, Jenny hurriedly nodded. Following Claire's orders, the motorcyclists stopped. They were entirely depleted by the battle. Victor, who had been so commanding only moments before, suddenly appeared defeated as he knelt on the floor of the cafe. Claire persisted in maintaining her weapon's focus on the group as they waited. We can talk about how extensive your operations are. First things first, Victor, tell me how many Pinewood Ridge businesses you've been extorting. The younger motorcyclist with the tattooed neck broke Victor's silence. In spite of his leader's intense stare, he blurted out the number 14. There are 14 establishments in Harrison County, with a few more in Millbrook. Victor scowled at Tommy, but Claire silenced him. Is that so, Tommy? She spoke to the boy on the bike. It was wise of you to work together. In your statement, that will appear well. Have you been a part of the Red Serpents for a while? With all of his former bluster gone, Tommy responded with a 6-month plan. My intention was completely innocent, I assure you. They insisted it was all about maintaining peace and safeguarding people. Claire's tone became a little more kind. Allow me to make an educated guess. They came to your aid when you were down and out, gave you the gift of brotherhood and a place to call home. Upon receiving Tommy's nod, she proceeded. That's the way groups like these function. They exploit people's desire for belonging and channel it into something negative. In the distance, sirens sounded their warnings. Claire praised Jenny for keeping her composure while providing the dispatcher with accurate and detailed information. In approximately 30 seconds, Claire remarked, the police will arrive. Keep in mind that your punishment may be drastically affected by your cooperation at this stage. Turning over the state's evidence is something you should think about, Tommy. The time is now for you to begin again. Victor pivoted to give Tommy the evil eye. You drive us crazy. Damn, you're dead. Victor, that's just another tactical gaffe. Angry Claire yelled out. Threatening a witness in addition to your previous accusations? Not smart. She came to a stop as squad cars rolled into the parking lot, their flashing red and blue lights illuminating the walls of the cafe. Those files I described will still end up in the hands of law enforcement, regardless of what happens to Tommy or anyone else who cooperates. In addition to providing some intriguing information regarding your actions in Afghanistan prior to your commendable release, Victor's complexion turned pale. By what means were you able to recall from your time at the CIA? Claire wore an icy smile. We meticulously document everything. As soon as the police officers entered the cafe, their rifles drawn, the door sprang open. Claire introduced herself right away. Gun in hand, bearer of a federal gun's license. My weapon is now going to be set down on the table. She placed her Sig Sauer down with careful and methodical movements. Claire was familiar with the veteran officer, Claire Rodriguez, from their morning coffee outings together, and she wasted no time establishing command. Rodriguez went up to Claire while the motorcyclists were being read their rights and handcuffed. Are you curious as to why my normally dull Tuesday morning took an intriguing turn? With her handgun holstered, Rodriguez inquired. With grace, Claire shrugged. Here is a brief overview of the topic of business ethics. Got anything for Detective Chen today? Tell him about the Red Serpents activities in Harrison County, he'll be interested. Rodriguez gazed at the situation. Disrupted furniture, shattered coffee cups, and the arrest of 5 individuals associated with an infamous motorcycle gang. Just a little chat, huh? She shook her head in a way that conveyed both amusement and frustration. Full disclosure is required, as you are aware. Claire wholeheartedly concurred. However, she proceeded to face the counter first. Jenny, I think I might use a new cup of coffee right about now if you don't mind. During our conversation, my most recent one became chilly. Jenny emitted a somewhat crazy chuckle as she came from behind the counter. Subject to the home, Ms. Mitchell. On the house, without a doubt. Customers who had escaped earlier began to return, albeit hesitantly, as officers started taking statements and photos of the incident. With his newspaper long since forgotten, the old guy who had seen it all remained rooted to the position at the counter. And he told everyone who would listen that it was the most incredible thing he had ever seen. As if she were a superhero, she vanquished them. The description made Claire somewhat grimace. Yeah, Mr. Harrison, I'm not amazing. Simply someone who believes in refusing to be bullied. She graciously took Jenny's freshly brewed coffee. To be fair, I'm sorry I had to interrupt your morning reading. Additional police vehicles were on their way, and local news vans had also picked up the call via their scanners. Outside, Claire could see a throng of inquisitive onlookers, all with their phones ready to capture whatever the windows revealed. Rodriguez made the comment that this will be shared widely on social media within the next hour. A sigh escaped Claire's lips. So much for remaining unseen. With a deliberate addition, she sipped her coffee. On the other hand, maybe that's not so terrible. The ability to resist coercion is an example that others need to see. Tommy, who was being led to a police vehicle while handcuffed, spoke up once more. I would like to tell them everything, Ms. Mitchell. Regarding all the enterprises, the processes, and everything in between. Claire gave a knowing nod. Good call, Tommy. It would be wise for Detective Chen to speak with Officer Rodriguez before proceeding. He seems like he may be a great witness. Claire watched as cafe owner Eleanor Thompson pushed through the increasing throng outside as the morning's events started to take a more predictable shape. As Eleanor examined the destruction at her cafe, her expression shifted from panic to perplexity upon seeing the jailed motorcyclists, and then to amazement as Jenny hurried over to explain what had transpired. Jenny completed describing what had happened that morning, and Eleanor Thompson stood in the middle of her cafe, her eyes wide as she took it all in. As they swiftly collected evidence and interviewed witnesses, police officers maneuvered around them. A growing throng had gathered outside, but the 5 members of the Red Serpents were already safely ensconced in their respective patrol cars. Well done. With a quiver in her voice, Eleanor looked over at Claire. Did you refuse to submit to their authority? Should I open a cafe? Claire placed her coffee cup on the table. Certainly not limited to your cafe, Eleanor. For each company they've been harassing. At the flipped chairs, she made a gesture. The damage is my fault, and I'm sorry. Please forward the repair invoice to me. Emotions boiling over, Eleanor shook her head in disapproval. How bad is it? Claire, for security reasons, they have been withholding $3,000 from me every month. To meet their expectations, I've taken out loans. In comparison to, a handful of shattered chairs cannot be considered significant. In the midst of her intense feelings, she faltered. With his seasoned eyes swiftly evaluating the situation, Detective James Chin decided that was the best time to step foot in the cafe. Months of following the Red Scorpion's movements had yielded insufficient evidence and unwilling witnesses. He mustered up a faint smile as he beheld the handcuffed gang members in the cop cars and the mounting stack of witness statements. He gave Claire a knowing glance as he welcomed Ms. Mitchell. You being at the core of this somehow doesn't surprise me. Who can explain this to me? In the following 20 minutes, Claire gave a thorough narrative of what had happened, drawing on her experience in intelligence work to provide vivid details and exact descriptions. More and more local company owners started showing up at the cafe as she spoke. News had gone fast across the little town's close-knit community. The proprietor of the hardware business across the street, Mike Patterson, made his way through the throng. Could it be Eleanor? He inquired. Was it at last someone who dared to confront them? His tone betrayed the seriousness of someone who has been feeding the Red Serpents as a form of protection as well. The proprietor of the neighborhood food store, Anthony Garcia, approached them before Eleanor could respond. A SMS message informed me of the events. Reportedly, a woman single-handedly dispatched 5 motorcyclists. He double-taked when he saw Claire seated serenely at her table. Hey, are you the one? In order to address the expanding gathering of business owners, Detective Chin increased his voice. We need to concentrate on gathering evidence and getting statements right now, but I know you all have questions, ladies and gentlemen. Now is the moment for those who have been extorted by the Red Serpents to come forward. Business owners started approaching the investigator one by one, and Claire watched them all. Hope, a stronger emotion than fear, was gradually supplanting it. Because everyone was too scared to stand out on their own, the Red Serpent's strategy of isolating and intimidating had succeeded. That wall of seclusion was beginning to crumble as more and more people spoke up. With her trembling hands no longer an issue, Jenny began preparing coffee for everyone. The young barista regained her self-assurance as she triumphantly told the audience the details of Claire's takedown. Someone should have shown you her. Jenny informed a riveted crowd. She seemed completely at ease, as if she were lecturing. The moment they brandished their guns, she persisted in highlighting their errors. After coordinating with other units, Officer Rodriguez went up to Claire's table. In a low voice, she informed us that Millbrook in Harrison County was reporting to us. I think Tommy has started talking already. Names, locations, and details about their entire operation are being divulged by him. Claire nodded, and the children froze. With the right approach, fear has the potential to be a potent catalyst for transformation. At his age, Tommy has plenty of time to make a fresh start. And who was Victor? Rodriguez inquired. His background in the military will make things more complicated, Claire said. Using his training for illicit activities would land him in much more trouble, but occasionally a public humiliation serves as a wake-up call. The media's visibility outside had increased. Reporters were attempting to interview witnesses as local news vans prepared for live broadcasts. As Claire looked about, she saw individuals holding up their phones and broadcasting live footage to various social media sites. Pinewood Ridge was not the only place the news had gone. Returning to Claire's table, Eleanor ended her conversation with Detective Chin. Everything about the cafe owner's mood had transformed. As she talked, she straightened up and raised her voice. The security footage will be necessary, according to Detective Chin. Last month, I followed your recommendation during our security consultation and had those modern cameras, the ones that can recognize faces, installed. Coming to a realization, she halted. Did you not know? This confrontation was inevitable, as you knew. Claire added a little more coffee to her mug. It was my suspicion. The Red Serpents' demands have been getting more and more extreme. It was inevitable that they would eventually become arrogant and do something foolish. When they did, I simply checked to see that we were prepared. Mike Patterson chimed in on their chat as well. A cafe in Millbrook is run by my sister. They've also been forking out cash for insurance. Could you perhaps provide us a hand in forming a group of business owners? Is there a way to make sure this doesn't happen again? As other company owners showed up, they were just as eager to join in on the conversation. Claire witnessed a significant event unfolding. People who had been afraid to interact with one another were now reaching out to one another, creating bonds and gaining power as a result. While Claire was being interviewed, Detective Chen was continuing taking statements. He predicted that this will affect 3 counties in some way. Companies from all across the world are calling us to report extortion scams like this one. Varying gangs, identical strategies. Claire said that all it took was for people to witness that resistance was possible. Confronting fear as a group weakens its grip. The Copper Kettle Cafe became the epicenter of a fast-moving tale as the morning morphed into afternoon. Lisa Chen, a local newscaster who is unrelated to Detective Chen, stood outside and gave a live update to her morning show's expanding audience. Here I am, outside the Copper Kettle Cafe, where earlier today a remarkable altercation occurred between the infamous Red Serpents Motorcycle Club and one female customer, according to eyewitnesses. Rumor has it that the woman, who has only been named as a former CIA operative, was able to stop 5 armed gang members from extorting money from local businesses all by herself. Claire watched the news with a mix of boredom and resignation. Messages from her previous employers have been continuously ringing her phone. The most recent one came from her former boss at the CIA, Mitchell. I saw the news, subtle as always. Give me a call whenever you're free. Detective Chen was working in tandem with law enforcement from nearby agencies. As additional victims came forward, the scope of the probe quickly increased. The Red Serpent's inner workings were revealed in a deluge of detail after Tommy's confession. According to Chen, 7 additional Millbrook businesses have also reported the incident, and a task force has been established by Harrison County to address the high number of complaints. People are gaining the guts to speak up who previously were too timid to do so. With a nod, Claire observed as Eleanor led a cleanup crew that had offered to assist in bringing order back to the cafe. An enormous and rapid response had been received by the community. The local tradesmen saw their offer to fix the damage for free as a way to show solidarity with the victims of the gang's intimidation. Another reporter was interviewing Jenny. Her apprehension had turned into anticipation. Ms. Mitchell was saying more than just stopping them. By gracefully navigating the circumstance, she demonstrated that we need not be terrified. The level of precision and attention displayed was reminiscent of witnessing the defuse of a bomb. The gathering outside had intensified. News had traveled quickly over social media, drawing residents from nearby communities. There were a lot of company owners who had similar experiences with extortion and intimidation. Claire witnessed them banding together, trading contact details, and planning. Officer Rodriguez came back from questioning the individuals. What you've started is significant, she informed Claire. At the clubhouse, the leader of the Red Scorpion is already contacting his attorney. Their goal is to deflect attention away from Victor and his team by asserting that they were operating autonomously. In her reaction, Claire used the classic organizational response. Every time a problem is brought to light, the higher-ups try to pin it down. However, that will be made more challenging by Tommy's evidence. Outside, a fresh face broke through the throng. Along with his assistant and many council members, Mayor Robert Wilson had shown up. The mayor had always kept his distance from the town's gang troubles, being a political survivor. He was prepared to stand his ground now that he could feel the winds changing. "Ms. Mitchell," he yelled as he walked inside the cafe. "It is my sincere desire to convey Pinewood Ridge's appreciation for your courageous deeds of earlier today." He sounded like a career politician, all sincerity and practice. Claire maintained eye contact with him. "I appreciate it, Mayor Wilson. It is my hope that this signifies a greater effort by the City Council to combat organized crime in our town." Wilson swiftly got over the faint grimace from the mayor's aide at her candor. "In a word, yes. As a matter of fact, I'm making an announcement about a special commission that will look into crimes committed against local companies. We would be truly grateful if you could think about being our consultant." Eleanor advanced before Claire had a chance to reply. "Mayor Wilson, I must respectfully contend that the business community requires more than just committees. Take action now. Even if the Red Serpents are dealt with, other groups will inevitably emerge. Funding for law enforcement must alter, our security infrastructure must improve, and small companies must be supported." There was agreement from other company owners as well. Citizens who had previously been timid were now around the mayor. After Claire's efforts, the focus moved from appreciation to specific requests for structural change, and she felt a sense of accomplishment. Chen, the detective, drew Claire to the side. "Just got a call from the FBI. Members of their task force that deals with organized crime will be sending agents. It would appear that the Red Serpents are involved with bigger criminal organizations in 3 different states." "Not unexpected," Claire remarked. "This kind of organization isn't unique. They often become part of more extensive networks." For a moment, she thought. Even with the FBI's assistance, the community as a whole will need to make changes for the better. A fresh party walked through the cafe's door. Under the direction of Diana Foster, president of the Chamber of Commerce. They approached Claire with intent, lugging files and iPads. "Ms. Mitchell," Diana started. "For months, we have been gathering information on illicit actions impacting local businesses, but nobody was ready to be recorded." At this point, she pointed to the group of business owners who were having a heated debate with the mayor. "How about we enlist your assistance in creating a thorough program of security training for our members?" Claire gave Diana's request serious thought. Already, the head of the Chamber of Commerce was presenting data. Of the companies that came forward, 27 had reported extortion attempts in the previous year. It was believed that the real figure was substantially greater. "Our first order of business," Claire said, "is to set up a safe method of reporting. With the Red Serpents now in police custody, many company owners continue to fear reprisal." Turning to Detective Chen, she spoke. "An anonymous tip line should be established by the police department, ideally with connections to both the local police force and the FBI task force." With his iPad in hand, Chen nodded in agreement. "Within 24 hours, we can have that up and running, but how about safeguarding those who are coming forward right now?" "Sure, I can lend a hand." A fresh voice emerged. The proprietor of Pinewood Ridge Security Services, the ex-Marine Jack Morrison, D shown up. "If a business owner is willing to testify pro gratis, my firm can supply them with temporary security details." As soon as the mayor overheard, he intervened. "All witnesses will be protected by the city in coordination with Mr. Morrison's company. Any licenses and permits that are required will be expedited by us." Claire observed the exchange with curiosity. Only a short time ago, these very same individuals were too terrified to bring up the gang issue in public. They had now organized, combined their resources, and were solving problems. It wasn't her attack on the bikers that had set things in motion. Realizing that we could stand united had been a revelation. With greater assurance than before, Jenny came over with freshly brewed coffee for everyone. "A few of my co-workers in the service sector have been discussing organizing a union, Ms. Mitchell. Regarding safety, you are aware. Could you? In our initial encounter, would you be open to sharing your thoughts?" Eleanor joined them before Claire could answer. "Jenny, a union would be a fantastic choice. The truth is that we need to work together with other companies. Strengthen the figures, doesn't it?" With intent, the cafe owner's eyes gleamed. "We may develop a network, report questionable behavior, and alert each other to impending danger." A formerly engrossed detective, Chen, finally spoke to the assembled crowd. "The FBI is broadening their investigation, as we have just learned from processing that Tommy has provided us with the names of Red Scorpion's associates in 5 additional counties. All around the state, this will be felt." The presence of Tommy's mother at the cafe was observed by Claire. As she discussed her son's cooperation with police with Officer Rodriguez, the distraught mother appeared to be both relieved and devastated. Claire jotted down in her head to meet with her at a later time. The informant's families frequently required assistance and safety measures as well. The media's visibility outside had increased. Widespread coverage of a community's resistance to organized crime was garnering attention from national news networks. Claire recognized the beginnings of the news coverage. An ex-CIA agent ignites a communal revolution as a small village stands up against a criminal enterprise. Diana Foster continued her presentation, explaining the details of a thorough network security system for businesses. "We must have meetings for training, procedures for handling emergencies, and a means of communication." Looking expectantly at Claire, she paused. "Is a longer-term position as our security advisor something you're thinking about?" According to Claire, she had a superior suggestion. "Join forces with local business owners, police, and city authorities to form a community safety council. This needs to be spearheaded by the community, but my company can offer the basic framework and training." Without hesitation, the mayor adopted the plan. "Sure, that's great. A specialized office can be established and city resources can be distributed." Even though he was already planning how to capitalize on the good press, Claire extended a helping hand. "This is not a platform for political campaigning, Mayor Wilson. There must be true community participation and supervision for it to be considered a grassroots endeavor." Eleanor stood by her side. "Oh, I see. We must prioritize the well-being of the community over partisan interests." She did, in fact, survey the assembled company heads. "We need to choose delegates for the council from among ourselves, individuals who have been through this before." Something outside the room caused the conversation to stop. There was a gang of motorcyclists who had shown up, but they weren't Red Serpents. Their jackets bore the insignia of another nearby motorcycling group, the Road Kings. The cops stiffened up at once, but the leader of the gathering made a non-violent sign by raising his hands. He warned that they weren't in it for trouble. "The events were reported to us. Our group. It is important for us to emphasize that we are distinct from the Red Serpents. We are real. We participate in community activities and charity rides. We must ensure that our community does not become intolerant of motorcyclists as a result of their actions." Claire gave the gathering her entire attention. They were open and kind in their body language. If they wanted to get away quickly, their bikes were ready. Cautious, yet not combative. She jotted down another thought. In order to facilitate community rehabilitation, it is necessary to differentiate between illegal businesses and legal motorcycling organizations. To have a conversation with the head of the Road Kings, Jack Morrison rose to his feet. Being a veteran himself, he could act as a mediator between the motorcyclists and the anxious store owners. As Claire observed, they were already planning how the Road Kings could contribute to community safety initiatives as they swapped contact details. By the time the sun went down, the Copper Kettle Cafe had become a makeshift community hub. As many groups worked on their projects, tables were crowded with laptops, papers, and discarded coffee cups. There was now order in the mayhem that had been the confrontation earlier in the day. While Jenny and the other service workers planned their first union meeting, Claire stood in the corner and observed. Even the young barista herself was surprised by the leadership ability she had developed. A guarantee of safety for everybody is our paramount obligation. No one should ever feel unsafe on the job, Jenny was arguing, and that includes everyone from delivery drivers to dishwashers. An update that changed everything was brought to Claire's attention by Detective Chen. Tommy delivered his full statement just now. Subtly, he spoke. It wasn't just the Red Serpents at work. The county clerk's office, city hall, and the police department were all in their network. Those who were compensated to turn a blind eye. Unsurprisingly, Claire gave a nod. In most cases, corruption goes beyond the surface-level dangers. Thus, systemic change is necessary for actual transformation. She stole a quick glimpse at the mayor, who perched outside with reporters. Just how high is it capable of going? According to Chen, we're going to find out soon. The probe is now involving the Public Corruption Unit of the FBI. Some zoning modifications and building permits that benefited affiliates of Red Serpents are of special importance to them. The door to the cafe chimed once more as Amanda Chen, the sister of Detective Chen, and the assistant district attorney of the city stepped inside. She went straight to Claire and her brother, her face betraying her seriousness. Amanda made the announcement without providing any background. A special grand jury is being named. This extends beyond gang-related pursuits. We must act swiftly before evidence begins to vanish. We are considering RICO charges, money laundering, and public corruption. Claire thought about this change. The community should be informed, but with caution. Corruption in government can lead to the destruction of evidence or threats against witnesses if we divulge too much early on. She turned to face the assembled company owners. They've mustered the bravery to do it. Unseen dangers must not be allowed to undermine that. They were drawn in by a disturbance outside the entrance. 3 additional women had joined Tommy's mother on her return. Both of their moms were members of the Red Serpents, and Claire knew that Victor's wife was one of them. Somewhat anxious, but resolute, they appeared. Our goal is to provide assistance. Tommy's mom said. These men. At first, they weren't terrible. They were taken advantage of by the gang when they were weak. Similar to Tommy, there must be others who are terrified to leave but want to. Upon seeing the ladies, Eleanor sprung into action to greet them, offering them coffee in a peaceful table far from the prying eyes of the cameras. Claire observed the proprietor of the cafe's effortless transition into her new position as a leader in the community. Eleanor proposed that we launch a rehabilitation program that would serve at-risk youngsters as well as gang members. Get out of there before the cycle starts. Speaking up was the leader of the Road Kings, who had remained to provide a hand with the planning. We have a club that could lend a hand. Let the youth see that there is a good way to be a brother. Guidance, instruction for employment, permitted pursuits. This was just one more thing on Diana Foster's ever-expanding list of projects. The president of the Chamber of Commerce had shown remarkable flexibility by moving away from narrowly focused economic issues and toward the greater good of the community. Jack Morrison, who specializes in security, joined the conversation. We must also consider urgent security measures. There may be some desperate actions taken as these corruption charges begin to drop. A former supervisor from the CIA texted Claire, making her phone ring. Bringing resources to tomorrow's meeting at 0900. You have a few pals who are really considering adopting your community rehabilitation strategy. Officer Rodriguez made some shocking announcements after collaborating with other precincts. Neighboring towns are contacting us. Questions about how to establish comparable community safety councils are being asked. This is going viral at a rate no one anticipated. After addressing the media, the mayor made an effort to regain command of the situation. He even went so far as to propose that we establish an official steering committee. Naturally, under the watchful eye of the city. But now the influential members of the community could speak up. Rest assured, Eleanor meant no disrespect to Mayor Wilson. But this must remain grassroots. All of us here are familiar with our neighborhood. Our requirements are clear. Claire applauded as she watched the exchange. Emerging organically from the crisis, community leaders were naturally checking the mayor's attempt to institutionalize the movement. Amanda Chen meticulously documented every detail, constructing her argument. According to her, Claire had never seen anything like this. Fear typically keeps communities from speaking up. But this, she said, gesturing toward the assembly of involved individuals in the room. This is the path to lasting transformation. Claire was presented with a stack of papers by Assistant District Attorney Amanda Chen as the sun dipped below the horizon and created long shadows through the windows of the Copper Kettle. A tangled network of relationships between the Red Serpents local authorities and a number of noteworthy commercial developments in the region was laid out in the papers. Take a look. A specific collection of transactions was highlighted by Amanda. Prior to the enigmatic zoning changes, shell corporations purchase excellent real estate. There was a sudden and dramatic sale of properties that had been passed down through generations. They were all involved with companies that paid the Red Serpents to keep them safe. Claire carefully examined the designs. She has a broader perspective because to her schooling at the CIA, running a protection racket wasn't all they were up to. That was her final statement. As a result of their assistance, crooked officials were able to seize development deals from small enterprises. A broader plan included the intimidation. Additional files were contributed to the table by Detective Chen. Everything was unveiled by Tommy's testimony. This little one meticulously recorded everything, dates, names, and sums. He was astute enough to devise an insurance policy, despite his lowly appearance. The news hit Eleanor like a ton of bricks. A number of things were crystal clear to her after she had been quietly listening close. Feeling the heat to divest from the cafe. The unexplained results of the building inspector. Our permits became suddenly problematic. The sum for protection wasn't the only consideration, was it? No, Claire softly confirmed. Your cafe is situated on a corner lot, which is highly desirable according to developers. A lot more was going on behind the scenes, and the Red Serpents were only the visible part. The gathered community members' indignation was channeled into something more concentrated as word of the situation spread rapidly. No longer was this limited to criminals on the street. Affluent individuals were taking advantage of their own neighbors in this story. Something came to Jenny's mind unexpectedly as she was coordinating union contacts. 3 additional local coffee shops went out of business last month. They all claimed code infractions were to blame, even though they'd had no issues for years. Amanda verified that Millbrook and Harrison County also exhibit the similar pattern. The same network of shell firms is responsible for the forcible eviction of small enterprises, the hasty selling of properties, and the development projects. With the precision of an experienced eye, Jack Morrison had studied the papers in silence. He pointed out that some of these real estate developers are associated with security companies. Companies subsequently awarded monopolies over the newly developed locations. It's all just noise. After introducing himself as Steve Russell, the commander of the Road Kings shook his head in contempt. Plus, they referred to us as a gang. Finally, we don't sugarcoat who or what we are. Another message from Claire's ex-CIA supervisor sounded on her phone. You should prepare your community for the involvement of state-level authorities in a widening corruption investigation. Attempting to maintain his involvement in all the conversations, Mayor Wilson suddenly appeared somewhat uneasy. His pallor intensifying with each message, he was seen by several to be constantly checking his phone. A change was already being made to the Chamber of Commerce's plans by Diana Foster. She made it clear that we must record every detail. Keep track of all the inspections, denials, and pressure tactics by making a timeline. Amanda gave a satisfied nod. That is precisely what the grand jury requires, and we must also ensure the security of these documents. Claire discreetly interjected once news got out about the probe, which had previously been handled. Data is being uploaded to redundant, safe servers. There would be further proof of obstruction if local documents were to be destroyed at this time. All the women who had testified, including Tommy's mom, had been paying close attention. Their targeting of our guys is now clear. Tyler, Tommy's mom whispered. Someone who was desperate enough to carry out their dirty task yet innocent enough to miss the forest for the trees was what they required. Officer Rodriguez had some news to share after returning from reviewing further witness accounts. All around the state, people are reporting the same patterns. A new round of FBI investigations is underway. It has the potential to enter the national spotlight. Out of nowhere, the mayor got to his feet, acting as though he were checking the time. Thank you for your time, nevertheless, I must now attend to other matters. He attempted to approach the entrance, but Detective Chen stood in his way. The FBI officers would actually like to speak with you, Chen gently informed Mayor Wilson. Your ties to specific development firms have piqued their curiosity. A change from pale to ashen occurred on the mayor's face. I should get in touch with my lawyer. Amanda, who was already retrieving a warrant, agreed that it would be prudent. But before we do so, please gather all of your electronic gadgets, including your phone. The accidental disappearance of any evidence would be highly undesirable. As the mayor was led out, Claire noticed that the room felt lighter without him. With fresh eyes came a new level of comprehension among the community members. Along with low-level criminals, they had been up against a system of corruption that ran deep into society. Shockwaves reverberated across Pinewood Ridge following Mayor Wilson's arrest. Even as television helicopters hovered above, filming the mayor's transfer to an FBI truck, the community's reaction was center stage at the Copper Kettle Cafe. As a nerve center for the rapidly growing movement, Eleanor had announced that the cafe would remain open for as long as was necessary. A further 3 members of the council have just announced their resignation. While reading on his phone, Detective Chen made an announcement. Claiming it's for personal reasons, they're leaving no stone unturned. Unsurprisingly, Claire gave a nod. Rats escaping a capsized vessel. Their hope is that resigning voluntarily will make them appear better than if they were caught up in the probe. While collaborating with FBI agents, Amanda Chen's laptop displayed a detailed network diagram. It was reported by her that the Bureau's Financial Crimes Unit had just made an intriguing discovery. Do you recall those front businesses? They are part of a larger system of related operations in 12 states across the country. Jenny glanced up from her phone, which she had been using to oversee the cafe's social media accounts. An entire nation is talking about our tale. From their own hometowns, people are relating comparable stories. Nobody is immune. The world over, this is transpiring. Instead of morning shows, the news was now playing on the cafe's TV. Outside of City Hall, a journalist stood. In a shocking turn of events, after Mayor Robert Wilson was arrested, federal authorities took documents from several municipal departments. Reports indicate that this is a subset of a broader probe into allegations of official corruption and organized crime. Away from the television, Eleanor spoke to the assembled members of the community. This must not cripple our town. Keeping vital services running is our top priority in light of the resignations of the mayor and council members. While collaborating with FBI agents, Amanda Chen's laptop displayed a detailed network diagram. It was reported by her that the Bureau's Financial Crimes Unit had just made an intriguing discovery. Do you recall those front businesses? They are part of a larger system of related operations in 12 states across the country. Jenny glanced up from her phone, which she had been using to oversee the cafe's social media accounts. An entire nation is talking about our tale. From their own hometowns, people are relating comparable stories. This is occurring all over the place, not just with us. Instead of morning shows, the news was now playing on the cafe's TV. Outside of City Hall, a journalist stood. In a shocking turn of events, after Mayor Robert Wilson was arrested, federal authorities took documents from several municipal departments. Reports indicate that this is a subset of a broader probe into allegations of official corruption and organized crime. Addressing the assembled members of the community, Eleanor shifted her gaze away from the television. This must not cripple our town. Keeping vital services running is our top priority in light of the resignations of the mayor and council members. She had already been passed by Diana Foster. Businesses and city departments can work together with the assistance of the Chamber of Commerce. Until this is resolved, we must provide stability. The viewpoint of Jack Morrison was augmented. Someone on my security teams has noticed anything suspicious. Other illegal operations have ceased as a result of the corrupt officials' haste. For fear of being implicated in the probe, they are running away. The leader of the Road Kings, Steve Russell, had been contacting other legal motorcycling groups. He elaborated by saying that they are using their networks to disseminate the NEWS. Any team serious about preserving its honor is cutting ties with the Red Serpents and anyone associated with them. This time it was an update from Claire's former CIA supervisor. Federal Bureau of Investigations is getting involved. Capital City is also showing similar trends. Prepare your team. Mother Tommy, who had been assisting other gang member families, had some good news to offer. There has been an uptick in the number of young males expressing a desire to quit gang activity. In their view, Tommy is cooperating with the authorities and receiving assistance rather than punishment. Following his briefing at the station, Officer Rodriguez came back. An internal affairs unit of the police force is operating at maximum capacity. The probe has resulted in the suspension of 3 senior officers. However, the bright side is this. At long last, the truthful police officers are willing to speak up. A young patrol officer who was assisting with security coordination mentioned that it feels like a burden has been removed. The crooked leader's immense authority made us all aware that something was amiss. At last, we're able to get down to business. Claire saw the community's ongoing process of self-organization. What began as a little altercation with some local goons has now revealed a crooked system that appeared untouchable only a few hours ago. Above all else, though, it had shown how powerful a community can be when its members work together. Detective Chen was helping Amanda analyze further records. She reassured the gathering that they could see the pattern now. By infiltrating local governments, recruiting gangs as muscle, and utilizing bureaucratic pressure and brutality, they gradually seized control of tiny towns. Eleanor emphasized forcefully that they had not anticipated communities fighting back. Isolation was their plan. We're too timid to defend one another. More developments were reported by Jenny, who was still keeping an eye on social media. We have received inquiries from other municipalities regarding the logistics of our response. The group is inquiring about the process of establishing its own community safety councils. Guidelines were already being drafted by Diana Foster. It is imperative that we record all of our findings in order to provide other communities dealing with comparable issues with a blueprint. A new message had arrived on Claire's phone, and this time it had come from an unexpected place. Victor, the commander of the Red Serpents, who she had met with earlier in the day, was communicating through his lawyer. Willing to discuss anything, not limited to Pinewood Ridge. Every single thing. Chen, the detective, read the note aloud from behind her. Their entire network might be brought down if Victor also cooperates. Sandra Martinez, an FBI special agent, walked in with folders labeled "Confidential" as the cafe's door swung open. Unfalteringly, she made her way to Claire and the Chen brothers. Without introductory remarks, Martinez started outlining what you have found here. We have been monitoring these patterns of matches for quite some time, but the community's reaction has never been this strong. Typically, individuals remain silent, endure the pressure, and ultimately surrender. In a proud manner, Eleanor declared that Pinewood Ridge is unique. We simply required a gentle nudge to remember that our strength lies in unity. In the corner, Claire overheard Jack Morrison and Steve Russell engaged in a heated argument. The head of the motorcyclist club and the security specialist were exchanging information regarding dubious construction projects in nearby counties. Morrison informed the group that they had discovered 15 other properties that are being evaluated. Repeated strategies, fabricated inspection results, rejection of permits, and increasing harassment. Amanda directed that those be added to the case files. The pattern is established by each piece. The Copper Kettle Cafe continued to move at a rapid pace, even after night had fallen over Pinewood Ridge. As the community members toiled away at constructing something fresh from the rubble of corruption, the cozy light streaming in from its windows served as a guiding light. Exhausted but resolute, Special Agent Martinez stepped out of her long phone conversation with Washington. She said that the formation of a specialized team had just been authorized by the Attorney General. This group has been dubbed the Community Corruption Response Team. The program's test site will be Pinewood Ridge. Curiously, Claire glanced up from her pattern analysis of the confiscated documents. Things are becoming clearer to them. The community element is sometimes overlooked by traditional law enforcement techniques. A combination of top-down and bottom-up approaches is required. The phone rang while Eleanor was planning the neighborhood gathering for the following day. The state banking commissioner was there. She mentioned after the call that certain development accounts are being frozen due to suspicion. The probe into the corrupt officials has put a halt on any real estate agreements involving them. Another round of depositions had just been completed by Amanda Chen. She went on to say that it's like a domino effect. We find 3 additional leads for every individual that comes forward. We are unable to keep up with the unwinding of the corruption network. Victor, testimony opened up everything, Detective Chen stated. Every meeting, payment, and threat was meticulously documented by him. It was insurance, in his mind. It seems he was correct, but not in the sense he had anticipated. Jenny, who is still in charge of the digital response, broke some unexpected news. Now people all around the world are talking about us. People from all around the world are contacting us to inquire about our organization's practices. Corruption and organized crime pose comparable challenges to them. The security network that Jack Morrison and Steve Russell had established had been extended. Morrison elaborated that they are developing a training program to educate company owners on how to spot and record questionable trends safely. Russell elaborated by saying, "And my club's arranging regular patrols. These are legal motorcycle groups that are partnering with neighborhood companies to demonstrate how they might help." An important update had been sent by Claire's old CIA supervisor. Verified international financial ties. Joining the inquiry is the Treasury Department. There is a lot of interest in your community model on the national level. A support group for families impacted by gang activities had Tommy's mom as its de facto leader. She highlighted that our role extends beyond assisting them in leaving gangs. We're assisting them in getting back on their feet, re-establishing relationships in the community, and finding legal employment. The reform efforts of the police department were reported by Officer Rodriguez. She said that new measures of openness are being put into place. There should be community monitoring boards, public audits on a regular basis, and avenues for direct communication with local representatives. A thorough strategy for the protection of businesses had been prepared by Diana Foster and the Chamber of Commerce. According to what she said, we are building an early warning system. A community response network can be activated by any company owner who encounters questionable pressure or harassment. Attention was immediately captivated by Agent Martinez. She went on to say that something vital is being highlighted in the FBI's investigation of your community response. Victim isolation and a sense of helplessness are staples of traditional organized crime. Their approach is utterly upended by your paradigm of instantaneous community support. Eleanor was outlining community projects for the future on a whiteboard. She emphasized that our actions should not be limited to combating corruption alone. To stop it from ever taking hold, we must construct mechanisms to do it. Jenny spearheaded a youth outreach program that sought out at-risk youth, who were a common source of recruitment for gangs. According to her, we're demonstrating an alternate approach. Before the gangs reach them, provide them with the help they need through community service, job training, mentorship, and other means. As these projects came together, Claire observed how everyone figured out how they belonged. There was now more going on at the cafe than simply a gathering spot. As a result, it sparked societal transformation. Government reform suggestions were being reviewed by Amanda. The official we're removing from office is not crooked, she said. We are reworking the entire system from the ground up to incorporate community oversight and openness. More and more members of the community showed up at the cafe, bringing food for the employees and fresh reform ideas, and the door began to open. Strangers that morning were suddenly cooperating like long-lost friends, all because they had a shared goal, and Claire couldn't help but notice. The Copper Kettle Cafe, a national icon representing community strength, stayed lit up as the clock ticked down to midnight. Live updates about what media outlets had termed the Pinewood Ridge model were being broadcasted by news vehicles that were still parked outside. After yet another conference call, Agent Martinez came back with even more important news. She subtly revealed that the president has been informed about our position. The possibility of an executive order to launch such community response programs around the country is being considered. Claire was not taken aback. The greatest line of protection against organized crime has always been communities. We only had to demonstrate its scalability. A video conference with company owners from all throughout the nation was being hosted by Eleanor, despite the late hour. According to her explanation to the online audience, it's not only about resisting. The focus should be on improving existing mechanisms so that they benefit the community rather than harm it. Breaking news was interrupted by Amanda Chen. A call for a special session of the state legislature was just made public by the governor. In light of our findings, they are formulating new anti-corruption legislation. Addition of further context by Detective Chen. This extends beyond our state. Within the past hour, our department has received inquiries from 5 other states. Our community response processes are what they are interested in. Over time, Jenny's social media command center transformed into a center for cooperation on a national scale. She mentioned that reports are coming in from cities all around the nation. Local communities are taking a page out of our playbook and forming their own safety councils. Updates from Jack Morrison's growing security network were given. He then proceeded to demonstrate that a pattern had been discovered by pointing to a computer map. Now that communities are prepared, the identical development companies are employing the same strategies in dozens of towns. It had come as a surprise, but Steve Russell's Road Kings had become advocates for community improvement. Various other motorcycling groups are contacting them, he added. Their goal is to find ways to have a positive impact on their communities and demonstrate that they are not all bad guys. A message from Langley popped up on Claire's phone. The CIA's research backs up the global implications. Comparable community resistance models are effective in fighting corruption all throughout the globe, and international development programs are studying your approach. Tommy's mom had recently wrapped up an interview that aired nationally. She reiterated, "They want me to speak at a congressional hearing," appearing equally taken aback by the sudden change in her situation. Talk about what we've learned about how communities can end gang recruitment once and for all. Beyond Pinewood Ridge, word of police reform spread thanks to Officer Rodriguez. She said that our transparency policies are being implemented by police departments all around the state. The previous administration is stepping down, and the new one is all about community oversight. With the help of national business groups, Diana Foster was coordinating. She revealed that a task committee is being proposed by the United States Chamber of Commerce. The Community Integrity Initiative is what they're referring to it as. There was another development that Agent Martinez mentioned. The Federal Bureau of Investigations, FBI, is establishing a new team to combat corruption in local communities. Here in Pinewood Ridge, they intend to establish its base. In a way she had never anticipated, Eleanor surveyed her cafe's new surroundings. A community hub was my intention when I opened this place, she pondered. I had no idea it would turn out this way. Jenny had established live feeds that linked comparable community centers nationwide. According to her, we're establishing a nationwide system. Instantaneous transfer of knowledge, assets, and assistance. Claire watched the change with a scientist's eye. She made notice of the fact that the corrupt officials and criminal organizations anticipated opposition. The unexpected turn of events was the metamorphosis. Communities that are radically altering their operations are impossible to combat. The district attorney's suggestions were being reviewed by Amanda. She went on to say that everyone is curious in the logic behind our argument. However, they are oblivious to the idea. The community's reaction included more than just the judicial case. Constant coverage of such movements occurring across the nation was shown on the cafe's television. No community was going down without a fight, as people stood up against corruption and organized crime. At the crack of dawn on Thursday, the Copper Kettle Cafe had been going strong for more than 24 hours. What started as an altercation with nearby motorcyclists escalated into a nationwide push for anti-corruption measures and community empowerment. Agent Martinez came up to Claire while she was going over the most recent intelligence briefings with some revolutionary news. She mentioned that this morning the Justice Department will be launching a nationwide program. The Community Empowerment and Crime Prevention Act is what it is being referred to as. The model program will be Pinewood Ridge. A sign of defiance and rebirth, Eleanor's Cafe now provided freshly brewed coffee to the industrious workers. She continued to be shocked by the attention and added that CBS Morning News wanted to do their entire show from here tomorrow. They say our modest diner was the catalyst for great American change. After visiting the federal courthouse, Amanda Chen brought important news back with her. Indictments from grand juries are trickling down. There were 87 officials from 6 different states, including 2 federal judges and 4 state senators. This is only the first step. As the investigation grew, Detective Chen provided background information. Novel insights emerge hourly. The scale of the corruption network was unprecedented, but it is now crumbling to dust. Jenny had turned her social media empire into a command center for the entire country. She mentioned that we're currently monitoring community movements like this in more than 300 places, with each city tailoring our approach to meet their specific requirements. Information gathered by Jack Morrison's security network was shared. He went on to say that criminal groups are now in a state of fear. They are ill-equipped to deal with cohesive communities. Their typical methods of coercion are having the opposite effect. The Road Kings, Steve Russell's creations, have come to represent societal change. He was pleased to hear that other clubs around the nation were taking cues from us. A national convention against corruption and in service to the society is in the works. A telegram from the State Department was sent to Claire in an emergency. International anti-corruption programs are studying a community resistance paradigm. Officials from the United Nations gathering information. A new strategy based on Pinewood Ridge could transform anti-corruption initiatives around the world. Tommy's mom had grown into an influential advocate for family assistance and recovery. She made the announcement that a national network will be established to aid at-risk youngsters, families in escaping gang influence, and communities in constructing brighter futures. News of sweeping reforms in the police department was brought to light by Officer Rodriguez. Based on our experience, she said, police academies are updating their training curricula to include modules on community participation and corruption resistance. International business organizations were coordinating with Diana Foster. According to her, our model has caught the attention of the World Economic Forum. They hope it will help combat corruption in emerging markets. Another breakthrough was shared by Agent Martinez. She confirmed that this location will serve as the headquarters for the new community-based division of the FBI. Law enforcement officers from all over the nation will get community policing training at Pinewood Ridge. With a sense of accomplishment, Eleanor surveyed her newly remodeled cafe. According to her, we have made something that cannot be stopped. An innovative strategy for bolstering communities, not merely a reaction to corruption. Jenny's online circle had expanded at an exponential rate. As she went on to explain, communities are actively engaging in real-time resource, strategy, and support sharing. The anonymity that enabled wrongdoing is fading away. With contentment, Claire watched the continuous metamorphosis. She pointed out that what we're witnessing goes beyond reform. When it comes to community resilience and self-defense, that's a huge change. Nationwide, prosecutors were submitting requests, which Amanda was evaluating. Our legal strategy is something everyone is curious about, she added. What really matters, though, is how the neighborhood rallied to support the lawsuit. Across the nation, the cafe's screens depicted similar scenes, people coming together, organizing, and standing firm in the face of intimidation and corruption. The Pinewood Ridge model was to be examined by a group of foreign observers. Your creation has the potential to revolutionize our fight against corruption on a global scale, their leader remarked. For the sake of reference, Eleanor had begun recording everything. She elaborated by saying that other towns shouldn't be required to begin all over. We're drawing up plans for transformation. Claire Mitchell sipped her morning coffee at her regular booth at the Copper Kettle Cafe, 1 week following the confrontation that altered everything. Even if nothing in Pinewood Ridge could be referred to be normal anymore, the cafe's operation hours had at last returned to normal. Eleanor joined Claire with her own cup of coffee and commented that it's hard to think it's just been a week. Pointing to the wall adorned with framed newspaper headlines, the cafe owner made a gesture. A nationwide revolution begins in Pinewood Ridge. The anti-corruption fight is being revolutionized by the social approach. How America combats crime, the influence of a small town. Martinez, the agent, showed up with the most recent numbers. She announced 2,000 arrests nationwide. 15 different large-scale criminal groups were broken apart. Because you dared to confront 5 bikers, more than $3 billion in corrupt assets were frozen. Claire gave a small smile. All I wanted was some quiet time to sip my coffee. Everyone pitched in, but the community really pulled through. Ugh. Jenny had other youths under her instruction in the art of social media coordination. An ongoing community response network has developed out of her makeshift command center. She boasted that we have established connections with groups in 38 different countries. Every one of them is modifying the Pinewood Ridge layout. Updates from the growing inquiry were relayed by Detective Chen. It all started with the testimonies of Victor and Tommy. We're revealing decades-long corruption networks. Plus, we're learning how to stop them from coming back, which is super essential. Amanda Chen was back from her trip to Washington. She indicated that the Community Empowerment Act is being expedited by Congress. Many see it as a watershed moment in American anti-corruption lawmaking. The security firm that Jack Morrison had founded had evolved into a training organization with a nationwide presence. He went on to say that we are educating communities on self-defense. Not just from street-level threats, but from entrenched corruption. The Road Kings, Steve Russell included, had established themselves as influential figures in the neighborhood. Brotherhood, he continued, need not imply criminality, and that is exactly what we are proving. Rather than weakening your community, true strength is found in strengthening it. A speaking tour around the country was in the works for Tommy's mom. She went on to say that families all throughout the nation need to hear that there is hope. That people can band together to end corruption and violent crime once and for all. Officer Rodriguez provided an update on the evolution of the police force. She went on to say that we had mended all fences with the neighborhood. Confidence is more effective than dread. The burden of proof was on us. Updates from the corporate world were sent by Diana Foster. She disclosed that the Pinewood Ridge approach is currently being taught in business schools. Community-centered corporate responsibility is what they're calling it. As more and more community leaders from throughout the nation arrived to learn from Pinewood Ridge's experience, the door chimed at the cafe. Eleanor had established a consistent program to share their experience and assist others in making comparable transformations. Her supervisor at the CIA sent Claire one last note. Programs for democratic development all across the globe are adopting the Pinewood Ridge paradigm. You may have altered the global strategy against corruption, not merely impacted a single community. Jenny presented Claire with the most recent data from social media. She announced that our hashtag had reached more than 100 million individuals. However, the figures do not reveal the truth. The story is around the communities uniting and discovering their inner strength. Above the cafe door, Eleanor had hung a fresh sign. A place where unity is forged. Sometimes all it takes is one individual to rise up and make a difference, read a smaller plaque below it. Claire watched as the cafe emptied its morning patrons, many of whom she recognized but who had been complete strangers a week earlier, banded together for a common goal. The Red Serpents had vanished, and the corrupt officials were brought to jail, but the true triumph lay in what had been constructed in their stead. You know what the best part is? Eleanor asked, refilling Claire's cup. It's not just about fighting corruption anymore. We've remembered how to be a community again. That's something no amount of intimidation can take away. Claire nodded, enjoying the peaceful morning atmosphere. The best victories, she said quietly, are the ones that build something new from the ruins of the old. Through the cafe windows, she could see Pinewood Ridge coming to life, not as a town afraid of criminals and corrupt officials, but as a community that had found its voice and its strength. Other communities would face similar challenges, but now they had a blueprint for success. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the Copper Kettle Cafe, just as it had a week ago. But now it illuminated something different, not just a local coffee shop, but a symbol of how ordinary people standing together could change the world. More coffee? Jenny asked, holding the pot. Lawrence grinned. Always. After all, you never know when another quiet morning might turn into a revolution.
Disclaimer. This channel stands against all forms of intolerance, discrimination, racism, and violations of human rights. The stories shared here are original creations, developed to encourage reflection, understanding, and constructive dialogue. All content is produced with a commitment to respecting diversity and honoring human dignity.